Okay, for my final paper, I talked about 10 key concepts that I thought were the most important things that we learned in this class. And the first one was cultural responsiveness. I feel like culture plays a huge part in education because it's important to understand where people come from to be able to understand how they learn the best and what the best way is to teach them. And I feel like it's our responsibility as teachers to get to know our students the best we can in order for us to be able to teach the best way that they can succeed. The next thing that I thought was important was something I'd actually never heard about before this class, and it's called sheltered instruction. This is a big key topic that we talked about throughout our ESL class. Um, They commonly refer to it as the SIOP model, and it's effective in teaching because it gives teachers this unique opportunity to allow students to respond to like academic and language development, which is really important, I feel like, and it's important because you can actually design lesson plans for English ESL learners. The third one was attention getters. I feel like attention getters are a big part of my list because it's important to make sure that your students are engaged. And if they're not engaged, they're not going to be able to learn from the lesson. So giving them something that gets their attention from the very beginning, whether it's a game, a demonstration, even just a warm-up, is very important in order to not only gain your students' attention, but to make the learning more fun and valuable to them as well. Number four is flipped classroom. I've had like the unique opportunity of actually being in a flipped classroom in high school. I took a pre-cal class, which was flipped, where I did my lecture at home. So she would record herself talking with a board and write out like how to solve each problem. And then in class, she would spend the whole time walking around and answering questions in order for us to do our like homework or worksheets and stuff in class. And I felt like that was very valuable, and I actually learned more than I had in any math class previously. And so I feel like that was an important topic that we talked about. And I feel like it's something that you can implement in any subject in my classroom, even through most likely like economics, which I'm doing my student teaching next year in, or honestly any history class you could do as well. You could post yourself talking about a lesson and doing worksheets and things in class. Number five was building an academic background through direct vocabulary. I feel like vocabulary is very important, especially for ESL learners, because if you don't understand a word, it's hard for you to understand the context of the sentence. Um, an example I used was if you're talking about conflict, like in history, that's very important because if you're talking about like the British and the U.S. and during like the colonization of America, and you don't understand the word conflict in the sentence, it could be like they're friends, they're enemies, or that they're honestly getting along very well. You can completely misunderstand the concept by not understanding one word. So I feel like it's important to like put words on the wall or to do flip books or any other kind of vocabulary getter because those are very important for ESL learners. Number six is Piaget's theory of cognitive development. I feel like Piaget is very important because he explains like all the different levels of cognitive development all the way through not only just being a toddler and a child, but all the way through adulthood as well, and how your brain changes and develops. And I feel like as a teacher, it's important for us to understand this development because without understanding where students are in their cognitive development stage, we won't be able to understand how to teach them correctly. I talked about the sensory motor stage from birth, which is 18 to 24 months, and I talked about toddlerhood in the pre-operational stage, which is 18 to 24 months, and then early childhood, which is age 7, and then the part that I'll be most focused on in my certification area is concrete operational, which is like the beginning of logical and observational thought, and the purpose of that is because they're not yet at formal operational, so I'll be able to look through Piaget's cognitive stages and know exactly like how far and how hard I can teach certain subjects. Number 7 is making content comprehensive. So I feel like this was interesting to me, and our textbook in chapter 3 talked a lot about comprehensive keys to building a solid background. So it's tying in new information to students and their own background. And the purpose in that is because if they can relate it to their own background, it's easier for them to comprehend. And if they can comprehend it, they'll be able to learn it the best that they can. So it's important to make things relatable and to relate it to the student's background and their previous understanding of things. Number 8 is the achievement gap. I feel like this is really important for teachers to understand because depending on what area that you're student teaching in or you're teaching in general in, I know Seguin High School is in an area that has a lower social economic status than what I grew up in personally. And I need to realize that before I go to my student teaching because of this thing that's the achievement gap. So what the achievement gap is it's like the disproportionality of educational performances among different subgroups in the U.S. And students that are racial and ethnic minorities with low social economic status are usually the students that don't perform as well. And I need to understand that because I need to make sure that my students that are at risk get extra attention that they need in order to succeed in my class. And leading into that, number 9 is at-risk students. So those are students who temporarily require ongoing intervention in order to succeed academically. And I wanted to touch on this because I feel like ESL learners actually fall into this category, which isn't. So it's important that I diversify my curriculum in order to help ESL students to keep them in school and not to drop out at as high rates. And lastly, number 10 is oral language development. So I feel like this applies directly to ESL students. In class, we talked about the importance of language and how powerful it is, and almost all human beings require a language at the age of 5. But after, between the ages of 5 and 10, it's hard to learn a new language. That's important because I'll be teaching on the high school level, and if I have ESL students in my class, I have to be patient, and I have to understand that you have to be patient in class with them because it's harder for them to learn a new language. Okay, well, those are my 10 things. Thank you for the semester. I learned a lot. Bye.